list 5 in a series that reviews rhetorical devices that you might see in speeches and readings you come across. These lists are meant to help with questions on the AP Language multiple choice section because some questions get really specific about rhetorical devices. But you also have to write a rhetorical analysis essay as part of the test, so you should be aware of rhetorical devices and how they function to dissect how an author is putting together an argument. So remember, knowing and identifying rhetorical devices doesn't mean you're going to pass. The real deal is knowing the author's purpose and audience so you can talk about how rhetorical devices help achieve that purpose with the audience. You can still get a good score without specifically naming a bunch of rhetorical devices, but you have to focus on what the writing is doing to help an author achieve the purpose. At the very least, these lists are going to give you an idea of the uses and functions of a lot of rhetorical devices so you can see how the author is using the language to argue the purpose. Because there are so many terms, I group them around common functions to hopefully make a little more sense of how they're used rhetorically. I'm calling list 5 language and syntax to talk about devices involving how writing is structured and how things are phrased. So this list is going to be divided into 2 videos due to the amount of words that fall under language and syntax. So here we go with list 5, language and syntax. Number 43 in the series is syntax. I guess if the list is called language and syntax, we should define syntax. Like the word diction, syntax isn't really a rhetorical device, but it is the vehicle that delivers them. So syntax is simply the manner in which words are joined to make phrases and clauses and sentences. So we don't need to say an author uses syntax because that's like saying a breather breathes. It's just redundant, but syntax is important. An author's syntax can reveal his or her style. Syntax can speed up or slow down reading. So an author is going to manipulate syntax to accomplish his or her purpose. Number 44 is language. This is another weird one to define, I know, but in this case it's kind of necessary because it helps us decode some of the ideas an author is trying to communicate. So we're specifically looking at abstract language and concrete language when we talk about language. So abstract. Abstract language is less defined and less tangible. It's how an author talks about ideas and qualities rather than specific things. And we might call this, or you've heard this called figurative language as well in many cases. But we do need abstract language to talk about things like loneliness or love, those kinds of concepts, as opposed to concrete. So concrete language is how we talk about specific things that we observe, that we see, touch, feel, the senses. The word concrete itself is a great clue because, concrete is hard and you can touch it. Concrete language then will deal for the most part with what's perceived by the senses or straight facts. Number 45 is conventional, like conventional writing. So when we talk about conventional writing, we mean following traditional techniques of formal writing. This is what we think of when we talk about academic writing. So all academic disciplines have certain parameters that they use to define conventional writing, which is why you have acronyms for like MLA, Modern Language Association, or APA, American Psychological Association. So depending on the disciplines like English, language arts, or social science that you're writing for, they're going to require you to meet the rules for one of these groups. Isn't that fun? Number 46. Cumulative sentence, also called loose sentence. So a cumulative sentence uses an organization that starts with the main idea, then expands on it with additional details in the form of subordinate elements, which could be like a dependent clause or an appositive, prepositional phrases, and items like that. I'm sorry I'm getting a little grammatical, but it's kind of necessary. So this type of sentence is actually complete before the end. So you have a complete sentence and then you have additional information. So here's an example. The AP language exam was extremely challenging. So there's your complete sentence. With its multiple essays, pressured by the limited time, added to the exciting multiple choice section, where expectations of a high score are tenuous at best. So you can see how much was added to the main idea at the beginning, that the exam was challenging, and then I just added details to develop a deeper understanding of the exam. So why does an author use this device? Well, for one, like, it can expand an explanation. You say something and then you give more insight and nuances and just give more information without the choppiness of having to do it in multiple sentences. It helps, the reader to focus on this one thing within the confines of one sentence. So it can give depth, it can give weight, it can give impact, as a reader kind of has to connect all of those things in their mind, the cumulative elements in their mind, so that all of the information is processed. So deeper sentences like that are more challenging and complicated, so it can be a powerful tool to make writing seem more sophisticated or explain something more deeply. Number 47, and this is a hard one to pronounce, is Aposiopesis. Aposiopesis. So if you wondered if there's a word that captured someone just stopping abruptly and not finishing a sentence or a thought, well, now you know. Aposiopesis, right? The question is, though, why would someone just... So one reason might be a dramatic effect. It can heighten the emotions or the pathos, like the situation is too tragic or too maddening to go any further and you just have to stop. Another reason might just be to allow the audience to think on the situation and draw its own conclusions. So either way, the sudden drop-off is just meant to... Number 48 is ANACOLUTHON. Another one that's hard to say, and it's also a little hard to understand. So it's best to think of ANACOLUTHON as a change in where you might expect a sentence to be going. So the end of the sentence has a different grammatical structure from the beginning. So sometimes you might see it as a break in thought that's maybe like expressed with a dash. So a real simple example might be something like, I saw my neighbor the cop pulled over and getting a ticket, dash. Oh, the irony, the sweet irony. That's one sentence, but it took a turn to express another thought. So why would an author use ANACOLUTHON? Well, usually it's to get the audience to pause or to think a little more deeply and reflect on an idea. So in my example, you have to think about what irony is and then look back at the sentence to decode and understand, well, what was ironic about it? So you can see how it can be used to kind of drive home a point. Number 49 is apostrophe. Now, I know we usually think of apostrophe as a punctuation mark, and yes, it is a punctuation mark, but this is English, so it's a little more complicated, right? Curse you, English, you confusing villain. So there you go. That's apostrophe, where there's an interruption to address a person or thing, whether or not it's actually present. So I stopped and I addressed English. You can imagine, like in Shakespeare, a character cursing fate for his or her bad luck. So why use it? Well, it's a good way to express emotion or to give voice to shock or to frustration. And it could also be used to bring in another person or another idea into an issue or an argument, like a politician caught for some wrongdoing, bringing up a different politician in similar circumstances, asking him or her how it was handled. So in that way, it can be used to draw attention away from an individual or even dilute blame. So apostrophe can confuse, or it can clarify, or it could just bring more nuance into a topic or material. So it has quite a few uses to it. Number 50 is appositive. And appositive is a grammatical term, which is really simply a noun or other description in place next to another noun that helps further describe it or define it. Just about everyone and everything has multiple appositives, like you. I could say your name, or words like student, or son or daughter, grandchild, lover of puppies. Those are all appositives for a person, whether I use a single word or a descriptive phrase. So you can see how these are useful for a writer because they can really help give a more full picture to whomever or whatever is being described. With appositives, you can pack more into a sentence without having to say, she is a this or she is a that. You can just put the descriptive word or phrase offset by commas within the sentence, so appositives can add to the richness and depth of a sentence structure as well. Number 51 is balance. Here's another word we already know, but has specialized meaning in terms of rhetoric. At least this time the meaning is similar, right? Balance in sentence construction is where both parts of a sentence have the same length and importance, and the sentence structure lines up as well. So a famous example would be the opening of Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. So you have kind of like this rhythm and this balance where things kind of are equal within the sentence itself. Number 52, and the last term in part 1, is ASYNDETON. ASYNDETON is intentionally taking out conjunctions between words, phrases, and clauses. Just like in that sentence, I could have said between words or phrases or clauses. The or was just taken out. I just said between words, phrases, clauses. I just dumped it. What's the purpose then? Well, it has the effect to speed up the sentence. You're not having these extra words in it. It makes it more impactful, almost like rushing the thoughts and ideas. I just did it again, right? So a writer may use ASYNDETON to have more intense, sometimes an urgent tone to it. So there you go with part 1 of a 2-part video about language and syntax. Catch the rest, part 2 of language and syntax, in the next video that's in this AP Language playlist. We'll see you there. I really appreciate you taking the time to check this out, and hopefully you found it helpful. It would be awesome if you could subscribe and tell people about the channel. Here is the playlist of the other rhetorical devices. Here's some writing workshops that I put together that will help you, with some of the writing that you might be doing. And then here's just something for fun, because we all got to relax sometime. Check it out, please. Until next time.